I decreased my service-based business's monthly churn rate from 30% to 7% in 6 months. In other words, we 4.2x'd our monthly recurring revenue simply by retaining more of the customers that we already had. I then took this same process and applied it to one of my one-on-one consulting clients, and their monthly churn dropped from 25% to 5%, 5xing their monthly revenue without them needing to sign a single new client. And in this video, I'm going to give you the exact same fulfillment system that we implemented. Now, to quickly illustrate why this is so important, let me show you something. So if you have 25 clients at 3K a month, that equals 75K total revenue per month. Now, if in this instance, you're signing 5 new clients per month and you have a 20% monthly churn rate, which is alarmingly common with service-based businesses, that means your business is 100% stagnant. Each month, you sign 5 new clients. However, given you have a 20% churn rate in this example, you're also losing 5 clients per month. And this is the unfortunate state of most online service-based businesses. However, this is where it gets interesting if you know these numbers for your own business, because if you can decrease your monthly churn rate from, for example, 25% to 5%, which is achievable with the right fulfillment process I'm about to give you in this video, then in that instance, you could go from a business that caps out at 75K per month to one that caps out at 300K per month, simply by going from a 25% churn to a 5% monthly churn. And remember, this is without signing a single new client. This is simply by maintaining 5 new clients a month and simply, as I said before, going from a 25% churn to a 5% churn. You will, by default, go from 75K a month to 300K per month, again, without signing a single new client. And so now I'm sure you can imagine when you look at this second business model here, how scalable it truly is when you also factor in going from, in this example, 5 new clients a month to signing 30 new clients a month, 40 new clients a month, or 60 new clients a month. You can imagine how much bigger that second company is. However, it all starts with achieving a single digit churn rate. And here is how we did it. So we built a fulfillment conveyor belt, which is a consistent and repeatable process that's replicated for every new client who comes on board, which once the end of the conveyor belt is reached, it either retains and or ascends your client into a higher back-end product or service, which of course massively increases your client lifetime value, which also then combats the rising ad costs that are also inevitable at scale. And FYI, the reason we consistently outspend all of our competitors is not because our ads are better, since everyone nowadays copies our ads word for word. So instead, it's because our client results are far better, which gives us 50 times our competitors' lifetime value. This is also why you probably see so many new ads every single day, and then the next day they're gone. What we do is we compete on our back end, not on our front end, since nobody can copy our back end. They can see our front end ad, rip it off, which is what they do, and then now all of a sudden we're running the same ads. However, nobody can, quote, see our back end and rip it off. So that is where we personally compete, and it's simply because of our fulfillment conveyor belt. So think of the conveyor belt as similar to a drink manufacturer, where there are thousands of bottles on a conveyor belt that get put through various stages from, the liquid being added to the label being stuck on and the lid being added, etc., right? It goes through each of its stages, and typically that conveyor belt runs 24/7, 365, and facilitates thousands of bottles, which all end up in the exact same position at the end of the belt, which is a completed bottle ready to be shipped. And essentially, we use this exact same conveyor belt idea for our client fulfillment. In the beginning, a client gets onto the belt, which means they onboard. They then automatically go through various stages, which is your fulfillment pipeline, which I'm going to get onto here in a moment. And then at the end of the quote belt, which is their initial project period, they then should receive by default the desired result and are ready to be ascended and or upsold into a high ticket back-end product. However, in order for this to work, your delivery has to be the same thing for every client every single time. Otherwise, it just won't scale, which is why serving multiple different customers is not efficient. In other words, it just breaks at scale. This is also similar to if you have a wide range of services, I'd highly recommend that you dial in on one service for one person, at least on the front end, right? Like back end is different, but when you're acquiring new customers at scale through typically ads, those customers need to all receive the same service every single time. Now, here's how I build my own fulfillment conveyor belts for myself and our clients. It's a simple 4-step process, and if you miss any one of the 4 steps, the conveyor belt will break. Trust me, I've had this happen. I've tried to shortcut the circuit, but it never works. You have to implement all 4 of these steps sequentially in order for your fulfillment to actually be scalable and produce that conveyor belt idea. Okay, so the first step, step one, is to figure out exactly what deliverables deliver your client's outcome. Now, this should be based purely off of the results they generate, not based on what you think your clients want. And for the most part, you should already know what this is. So now for this example, let's use Facebook ads. Everybody understands it. Okay, so you first need to figure out, okay, what is that deliverable? Okay, so once you've done that, secondly, you need to map out exactly how those deliverables should be implemented. So again, with Facebook ads as our deliverable, we need to then figure out, okay, what copy should be used, which creative should be used, who does the creatives, and should that be a deliverable of your service, or do you put that onto your client? You need to answer that question. What media buying strategy should be used, what funnel should be used, who creates that funnel? Again, is that a deliverable that you should add, or should that be on your client? What happens when the results slow down? So if you launch ads and then it doesn't hit, okay, what then happens? What happens when a client wants to scale spend? How do you do that? What happens when a client isn't happy with the Facebook ad results specifically? How do you handle that? What's the process you take that client through to take them from an unhappy client to a happy client? And on the back of that, how do you deliver the best possible experience, etc., etc. Now, as a quick side note, if you are just starting out, you need to realize you're going to get a lot of this wrong, which is totally okay. But what's not okay is to not know why. Since if you don't know why something isn't working, you can't change anything. So always be on the hunt to figure out why something worked and why it didn't work, because then you can simply use those insights to create new hypotheses to retest. And essentially, this first step boils down to mapping out what the most efficient and effective way is to get your clients to their end goal, no matter what that end goal is. In other words, you want to figure out what those specific steps are. So what do they do as soon as they come on board? Okay, great. What do they do next? And you want to map that out, because that's going to serve as the foundation to your fulfillment conveyor belt. Now, the best way I've personally found to get these answers is primarily through what I call a product or service feedback, results, refunds, iteration, feedback loop. Meaning you bring on a new client and you take them through what you think is going to work. You then see the results that generates, as well as how the client reacts and feels throughout that process. Then you iterate the process based on the client's feedback and results, and you make a new process hypothesis. And for the next client and also your current clients, you then test that new fulfillment hypothesis, and you simply rinse and repeat this process for the next 20 to 30 clients until you define your fulfillment conveyor belt. And for context, I rinse and repeated that exact process step by step for the whole of 2022. And it was only really at the start of 2023 where we could almost blindly take a client from onboarding through to getting them ridiculous results. But that's simply because we had refined and refined and refined and refined the process so much to where it just then became literally second nature. We could do it with our eyes closed. Hence why we now have scalable fulfillment. But remember, that took us an entire year to get to that point. And so to recap, the outcome of step one is to define your niche, first of all, that will allow you to build a fulfillment conveyor belt. Then you want to define your service, which is your deliverables, and define specifically how you are going to deliver those services and in what sequence. That then brings us on to step two. So once you've built your initial stages of your conveyor belt, you then want to create basically a fulfillment pipeline in whatever client CRM that you're using. Now, the way we have our fulfillment pipeline structured does not include all of the specifics around how to implement each step. It only focuses on the literally the 100,000-foot view of the steps themselves. It's very, very high level. Or in other words, we think just about what are the big pillars your clients need to go through in order to get the results. And so if you're interested about our fulfillment pipeline for our own company, it's basically the first step is they need to return their onboarding material. Then they need to book their onboarding call. They then have their constraints roadmap call. They then have their copy completed, which includes their ads and their funnel. We then go through our launching sequence, and then we have basically launch/active clients, and then we have ascended, offboarded, and refunded. But you can tell just by those titles how extremely high level those titles are, right? That's just literally the big steps that clients go through to then become an ascended client. But obviously for each one, as I'm going to show you here in a minute, I'm going to show you our internal fulfillment university. You'll see how deep I go on each one of those things. It's tremendously more in depth than what I just said there. But for your fulfillment pipeline, that's all it should be. It's just the high level. Clients onboarded, great. Now they return that onboarding material. You just drag them across into the next stage of the pipeline. Just like you have a sales pipeline, we have that exact same thing for our fulfillment pipeline. And similarly to a sales pipeline, typically, one of the stages is did they show up to their sales call? And then it just immediately jumps to closed, follow-up booked, whatever it is, or lost or whatever. It misses all those finer details. That's totally fine in your fulfillment pipeline, because I'm going to show you here in a minute on the screen exactly how detailed we actually go on how to do each one of those stages. Now, I also recommend inside of your fulfillment pipeline, you have either some kind of card or note-taking section that represent each client. And inside of those cards, you should have all of the important information on that particular client. So again, if you want to know what we do, for us, we have a link to the sales call notes, which helps the handover from sales to fulfillment. We have a link to that onboarding call recording and the doc that we use on the onboarding call. all. We also have a link to all of the ads that we create for the client, all the scripts, the VSL script, the sales letter scripts, etc. We have a link to their creatives. We have both edited and the raw files. We also link all of the weekly one-on-ones that we have with each client. Every client that we work with has a weekly one-on-one with their account manager. Every one of those calls is linked in their client card. We also have all of their funnel links, their pixel-based code, etc. Essentially, you should be able to open up any client in your fulfillment pipeline and know exactly at all times where they're currently at, what's going on with them, and you should also have access to everything that relates to them in terms of all of their assets, etc. Similar to how whenever you go to like a doctor's or whatever, they can pull up a file and they get in sync with your entire medical history. We basically want that exact same thing, but for our clients. Since this increases visibility massively, which I cannot stress this enough, it becomes increasingly important at scale, and it helps tremendously if you ever have an account manager leave you. It's far more simple to distribute your clients to new account managers in the event of someone leaving you when you essentially have an end-to-end file on every single client. Trust me, we've done this before where we had an account manager leave, it happens, whatever, but we would then try and transition clients over, but we had no context. All the context was in the account manager who left. It was all in their head. We didn't have a file that we could just bring up and get fully in sync with any particular client at any given time. Whereas this system provides us with that. And for us, if you're curious again, we have our fulfillment pipeline built on Asana. Now let's get into step 3, since this is where we dive deeper into the step-by-step specifics of how you deliver each stage within your fulfillment conveyor belt. So using our prior example of, Facebook ads, you would want to document in that example how to write ad copy that converts, how to create creatives, the process behind getting the creatives, who creates them, etc., how you operate that system, how to run the media buying, how to actually get the results in the ad account, how to set up and create funnels, or how to, if you're doing something a little different, how to get the funnels from the client if you don't have that as a deliverable, how to revive ad accounts when they slow down, how to scale ad spend, how do you make clients happy, how do you communicate with clients. You need to detail every intricate aspect of your service if you want to have the lowest churn possible. Now that can be done, how you actually detail it can be done through, the typical like SOP style checklist or docs kind of style, or you can do it in video style, or you can do it in both. Now I've always done it in the typical SOP style with an accompanying video explaining everything to the nth degree. So let me show you ours for context. All right, so this is our ScaleClients.io University. Now the name, actually, if you're interested, I got that from Apple. They have a thing called Apple University, so I just literally stole it from them. I love it. But we have it on school. Again, where you have this stuff, whatever, that doesn't matter. What matters is you have something similar to this that walks through, again, every intricate detail of your service and how to get your clients results. Now, you can see here, I've broken mine down into 7 weeks, and you can see that each week is very in-depth. So the first week overall is onboarding and expectations. Now, this really goes through a couple real high-level kind of ideas. Also, a lot of this first week is focused on client experience. So to have great fulfillment, you've got to have great client results and a great client experience. So the two things. Low churn basically equals client results plus client experience. Now, week 1, in our case, is focused primarily on, as I say, client experience. And so you can see just by the very nature of the titles in each of these weeks, how in depth we go. 27-minute training on effective client communication. And then I have another training on the required client communication cadence. So this is not even going through how to speak with clients. It's rather going through how often we have to reach out to clients on a daily basis to have the best client experience. Now, week 2 is copywriting for ads. Remember, our specific deliverable is Facebook ads. That's what we run for all of our clients. Paid ads. We run them, we build funnel, run paid ads, scale their qualified call volume up. And then we work with clients one-on-one. So actually, we have a theory of constraints process we take every client through, and we actually scale our clients' revenue. So although our core deliverable is, running ads, we act more as a growth partner with our clients to work one-on-one with them on all constraints across their company. We also have a really big sales department to actually help our clients close the sales calls we're generating for them. However, week 2, to go back to it, copywriting for ads, remembering that our core service is Facebook ads. Right? So week 2, I go through copywriting for ads. And again, you can see how in depth I go on how to write copy for ads that convert. And then week 3 is the sales letter aspect of what we do, which is really just the funnel side of things. But again, I've got a whole nother section going through specifically how to write the highest performing sales letters possible. Then week 4 is advanced media buying. Week 5 is ad tracking. Week 6 is the theory of constraints, like I just mentioned before. That's a really big part of what it is that we do. And we have a checklist for every possible constraint any one of our clients could face. And we've found historically there's only 6 constraints our clients face. And so what I've done is I've created a checklist on how to solve every one of the 6 constraints that could possibly arise at any moment with any client. So in other words, at any moment that a client has an issue, we have the best checklist possible to resolve that particular constraint. And then finally, week 7 is more just like admin, how to show up as an account manager. I have a training here on how to show up to team meetings as well, and a couple other things that we have in place. And so when you have this type of SOP or step-by-step checklist laid out, like I've just shown you, you will be shocked at how much easier it is to ramp new account managers and ultimately remove yourself from fulfillment eventually. Since instead of you being the glue holding your client results and holding fulfillment together and only you having full context, you now have an evergreen system, or in this case, I would really refer to this as an asset, holding your client results together, which the great thing is as well, once you've built that, it requires no additional incremental work from your side outside of obviously daily management, which you can eventually actually offload to a client success director. So we have a client success director now who runs all of our fulfillment. I build this stuff because it's super in depth. It takes a very long time. But now we have a client success director who runs our entire fulfillment department, and he simply reports to me on a daily basis. And so let's now move into the final step, which is step 4. So steps 1 through 3, focus on making your fulfillment consistent and repeatable, which is obviously required to scale, right? However, those elements in and of themselves won't allow you to scale your fulfillment. So whilst it makes it consistent and repeatable, it doesn't allow it to scale. So what I've personally used to scale my fulfillment whilst maintaining client results and client experience is called the account manager model. And there's a few reasons why this is by far the best fulfillment model I've ever come across. I mean, reason number 1, your clients get a genuinely real subject matter expert that they can work one-on-one with. You see, most models make it difficult or impossible to attract and retain real subject matter experts on your team, because usually if someone's a genuine expert at whatever it is that they do, they have a high price tag next to their name, which for the most part, the company just can't afford to pay whilst maintaining profitability. And the great thing is, in every niche, you can find subject matter experts, whether it be for, Facebook ads, Google ads, website building, or even you could go one step further and say more specifically like Webflow experts as an example. You could go CRO, drop shipping, marriages, life coaching, health, etc., 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 right? And by having a subject matter expert, it also allows you to remove yourself much more effectively, again, with the key being whilst maintaining client results and your client experience. The second reason why this is by far the best fulfillment model I've found to scale is that your subject matter experts make genuinely real money. Our fulfillment team make 10 to 15 grand a month. Now, if you have account manager model dialed in, usually there's nowhere else for your team to go in your industry to make the same amount of money that they're making with you, which is going to increase, or I should say decrease, your attrition rate, unless they start their own business. But obviously that comes with many issues and problems that working as a subject matter expert just doesn't have, which is a huge benefit. And it's funny, one of the most common questions I get asked by clients or whoever is, what if my account managers take my clients? And my immediate response is that if you are thinking about that with somebody on your team or your team in general, you've hired the wrong person. Now, outside of potentially just hiring the wrong person, you also obviously have things like contracts, and also your culture should make your team want to stay with you for an extended period of time. Outside of those few things, you also got to realize that actually your subject matter experts will probably make more profit at the end of the month than if they was to go out on their own anyway. So not only do you have all these things keeping them there, but also on top of that, they're probably just going to make net at the end of each month more money than building their own business. Unless they scale to like 50K or 100K a month, whatever, then yeah, sure, they may make more, but most people don't want to go down that route. And so it just simply doesn't make economic sense for them to leave you. And not to mention, this model allows you to scale a one-on-one or done for you type of service, since by having a one-on-one element to your fulfillment, whether, that's done for you or coaching, it doesn't really matter which one, you massively increase your client lifetime value since clients stay for far longer. You decrease your churn substantially since clients get way more value, and you decrease refunds because the account managers can easily handle any situation. And so that's obviously why maintaining one-on-one at scale is so important. And this is the only model that, again, I found that does this really well. Now, let me just show you really quick how we have our fulfillment team structured with the account managers. So typically at the top, you're going to have the CSD. Now, we was at a couple $100,000 a month before I installed an external CSD. He was promoted from within, like internally, but I mean, I promoted a CSD into this position that wasn't me. So in the early days, I was the CSD. So obviously I was the CEO and I was also running the sales side, but the CSD position's super important. I won't go into the specifics in this video, but it's extremely important you have a great CSD. And again, in the early stages, the CSD is most likely going to be you if you're the founder. Now, CSD is at the top. Underneath the CSD is where you have your account managers. So you've got account manager 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, we've found with our specific business model, with our type of fulfillment that we have, and just with the talent that we have in general, this CSD can handle typically between, it kind of ranges, but 5 to 6 account managers underneath them. Obviously, I've only got 4 here, but they can manage around 5 to 6 account managers until we have to break it out. And we have a new model now that we use. We're still kind of like figuring it out, but I could maybe go through that in another video. The model we now have could scale to probably, I think, 15 account managers under the one CSD. But we've used this model right here for the longest time, and it works tremendously well. So as I say, CSD, 5, 6 account managers underneath. And then of course, from each account manager, they, again, in our instance with our model, each account manager handles 15 clients. And so because of this structure, we found that this model scales, again, in our case, to around 90 clients in total, assuming that the CSD here is handling 6 account managers with each account manager handling 15 clients. It scales to around 90 clients. Now, obviously, we're way past that now. And so at that moment, it requires you to then switch again to another type of model, which if you're interested, I can just quickly explain it. Essentially, the new model that we now have is the CSD, which then manages directly, like we call them AM leads, AM lead 1, and they manage around, show you here, 4 AM leads. And then each AM lead handles 3 account managers underneath them. But the good thing about it is that they handle 3 account managers underneath them. And also these AM leads have half capacity. So these AM leads actually handle themselves their own 7 clients, roughly, because that's half capacity of our total capacity of an account manager, which is 15 here. And so if you think about it, you got 7 here, 7, 7, 7, right? So you got 5, right? So you got 35 clients just from the AM leads that they're managing. Then you have basically 5 pods of 3 account managers, each managing 15 clients total, which obviously that model then takes you to roughly 305 clients roundabout in total capacity, essentially, which is obviously the model that, as I said before, we've now switched to. And so that's essentially how it looks from like an org chart perspective. And so really, if you're interested as well, like the CSD, their main outcome or focus is QC, which is quality control. And then from that quality control, that creates a ton of topics in which the CSD can then conduct training on. The CSD also manages and takes the daily team call that we have for the fulfillment department. And then the account manager primary focuses on responsibilities is to essentially move your clients through the fulfillment conveyor belt and work one-on-one with your clients at every single stage of that conveyor belt. Now, if you have a done-for-you service, in my opinion, your account manager should also be the one facilitating the done-for-you element, as well as, again, moving that client through the conveyor belt. And the reason why I say the account manager should be the one doing the done-for-you service, if you have a done-for-you type of business model, is simply because I found the context that the account manager gains by doing the actual thing makes their communication with the client far more effective. I see some models where there's an account manager person who does the client communication, and then there's another person who does the done-for-you element. But what that creates is a breakdown of communication almost 100% of the time, and the client then naturally is going to not feel confident in you as a company, because every time they speak with their dedicated person, which is their account manager, the account manager is never going to know the answer to their question. They're going to have to go and speak with the media buyer or the person doing the done-for-you service, and then they're going to have to go back to the client. And sometimes in that process, things can get missed, things are misinterpreted, and the client is on the end of it thinking, these guys don't know what they're talking about. When in reality, it's just because the account manager in that instance doesn't know what they're talking about. However, if the account manager is the one doing the done-for-you thing that the client's actually paying you for, there's always going to be 100% context at all times. And this also is important, since another big part of the account manager's job is to have amazing weekly one-on-ones with every one of your clients. And so how is the account manager meant to have a great weekly one-on-one with your client if they have no idea what's actually going on behind the scenes with the done-for-you thing that you're delivering? The way that you make this structure work is to initially make every action successful on a unit or singular level, and then duplicate it and scale. So for example, stage 1, if you think about it, is going to be you working directly with clients. And as we know, your only focus here is to figure out what is going to work. But really, you as the founder should be doing that. Now, once you figure out a process that works for one client who came to you from a source that's scalable, i.e. ads is really the best, most scalable source of client acquisition, you can then duplicate that process across every client. It's quite literally that simple. Now, the same logic ought to be applied to building your account manager team, right? You have to make it work with one account manager on a unit level, and then you can replicate that process for multiple account managers. And up until around 200-ish, 250K a month, again, like I said before, you as the founder should be the CSD who hires, onboards, ramps, and trains, and really just ultimately manages the team. And then, since you cannot outsource that in the early stages, because not only are you trying to validate the account managers themselves, but you're also trying to validate the CSD role in and of itself, which is nearly impossible to do simultaneously. However, as I mentioned before, once you get the model working on a unit level, you've done most of the work, because now you can just simply replicate and scale. Now, just let me quickly finish on account manager compensation. So it's important to understand that there's no right or wrong way to do this. But what I'll do is I'll explain how we operate, and then you can kind of mirror that for your own business. So I always like to keep my account managers at between 10 to 15% on our P&L. So for example, if you charge 1K a month, they would make around $100 to $150 per month per client under management, roughly, let's say. Now, our account managers, for context, make $500 per month per client under management. And actually that jumps up to $700 per month per client under management for any client who ascends with us. And so obviously that naturally incentivizes the account manager to ascend and retain all of their clients, which obviously aligns their incentives with the company, since our existing business is much more profitable than new business, given obviously there's no cost of acquisition, there's no sales team fees, no setup costs, etc., etc. And given our account managers can handle 15 clients under management at any one time, that results in a 10.5K per month OTE, assuming that all of their 15 clients under management are ascended. And it was through implementing and mastering this fulfillment model that we were able to take our monthly churn from 30% down to 7%. And now we're working to have a negative churn rate, which is essentially where we make more new cash from our existing clients, excluding their base fee, their base retainer fee, than we have churned revenue each and every month. So I would keep you updated on our progress there. And if you enjoyed this video, like, subscribe, do your thing, and I'll see you in the next one.